Story 1. This story is something that happened to me and my fiancée fairly recently. We recently bought our first home together in a nice quiet area in the north of England. If you're not familiar with the British postal system, basically, we get letters delivered through flaps in our front doors and parcels that are larger than the letterbox get handed to us. If we're not in, they get given to a neighbor and we can collect them later. If no one can take them, they get taken back to the depot where they sit or are returned to the sender. So last month, we were just settling into our new home, and my fiancé bought some clothes online for a local gym he wanted to join. I was in the house the day of the delivery as I was expecting it, and I'm working from home. When the delivery lady arrived with the parcel, there were two. I thought nothing of it at first and put it in the garage for my fiancé to open later on. When he came in from work, he rushed to open his delivery like it was Christmas, and to his surprise, the second parcel was not for him. It had our address on it, but no name. We were both confused at this point and thought it may be for one of the neighbors, and they would collect it later. Time goes by, and we get a note through the door that reads, "Hey, my son got his parcel delivered to your house. Call me on, so I can come collect it." Again, we thought it was a neighbor. My fiancé called the number for a woman to answer and say she will be over shortly to collect the parcel. It turned out she lived across the town, and her son chose our address to have it delivered to. We thought this was weird, but we assumed it must have been a mistake. Anyways, we thought that was the last of this, but the next day, I got two more parcels for this lady's son, again with no name, but with our address on the package. At this point, I'm thinking it was a mistake on their part, or possibly they used to live here. They come to collect their parcels and all is well. But guess what? More and more parcels over the next week arrive for this lady's son. At this point, I'm starting to get really annoyed by this, as even though I work from home, I can't leave meetings constantly to collect parcels that aren't even ours. So the next day when the parcel lady comes, I just tell her sorry, this isn't for me, and you will need to return it to the sender. So off she goes and takes the parcel back to the depot. A few hours later, I hear a knock at the door and guess who? Entitled mother is standing there with her son. I hate confrontation, so my memory of the conversation is a bit hazy, but she was furious that we denied her parcel and now she had to wait for it to be re-delivered. I told her she needs to get her parcels delivered to her own home, as it's weird and inconvenient for me. Like I don't even know this lady. She then tells me it's easier for her to get them delivered to my home as I'm always in, and she isn't. Now maybe this would possibly be okay if I was friends with her and she asked, but she lives across town and chose a random address for her parcels. Anyway, she leaves and I think this may be the end of this story, but parcels keep showing up, and for the next week, I politely tell the parcel lady they aren't mine and to return to sender. After a week of doing this, I stopped getting the parcels, so I guess she got the message. How entitled must this woman have been to think it's okay to get parcels delivered to a random person's home that she doesn't even know because it's easier for her? I really hope she didn't start doing this to someone else after me. But it was satisfying to know that she would wait twice as long for her parcels because they were returned to the sender. The police are now informed, as I firstly didn't think it was anything illegal and just a lazy woman. I also have CCTV of the lady and a phone number. Story 2. I just got inspired to write about my crazy in-laws, and I hope this can be used as a cautionary tale. This was back in 2010. We had to live with my husband's family for a while. It was my sister-in-law's house, but we lived with her daughter, mother, father, and brother-in-law. When my son was 5 months old, my niece got violently ill one night and kept throwing up. Obviously, I decided to keep the baby away from the family so he wouldn't get sick. They didn't like that, especially my mother and father-in-law, who kept whining and complaining that I was keeping their precious grandson away. Even after explaining that I didn't want my niece to get him sick, I gave in because I was tired of hearing them complain literally all day on the condition that the niece stays in her room the whole time and they wash first. I am aware that this is where I messed up. I had to use the bathroom and was only gone for a few minutes. When I came back, My niece was on the couch holding my son, snot dripping from her nose, throat scratchy, with my father-in-law telling her, "Give your cousin a big kiss." Which she does, right on the lips. I freak out and snatch my baby and lock us in the bathroom so I can wash him. The whole time my in-laws were at the door telling me that I'm overreacting and that sharing germs builds immunity and other nonsense. Of course, the next morning, he has a high fever and he's really lethargic. I told the in-laws that I want to take him to the hospital, but my sister-in-law was adamant that it wasn't that bad and that I should make an appointment with his pediatrician instead. I didn't have a license or a car, so I had to rely on other people. Like an idiot, I listened to her because I thought she was on my side and knew more because her child is older. I made an appointment for that afternoon. I got there, and the doctor took one look at him and told me to take him to the hospital, which was 1 block down, and said they would expect me. He was admitted as soon as we walked in the door. They told me I was lucky and that if I'd waited any longer my baby wouldn't have lasted until the next day. His lungs were filling up with mucus and he couldn't breathe. He had to be hooked up to an oxygen tank, and they had to vacuum suction the mucus out every hour. We spent a week in the hospital and he made a full recovery. Of course, the in-laws fully blamed me. My mother-in-law especially, but the others more or less agreed with her. She said my son got sick because I was dirty, for having a child out of wedlock, and a bad mother. My husband was pissed and told her off, but that woman has the worst case of selective hearing I've ever seen. I never fully trusted her ever again. Story 3. Hi all, I saw a story on here that reminded me of my experience and thought I'd share. Almost exactly a year ago, my mom kicked me out of the house. Yes, during COVID. Came home and the locks were changed. I was 18, and the last month, my dad paid child support had just passed. I had no warning. I still had my car, so I drove it to a friend's house whose parents agreed to help me out temporarily. My mom and my aunt followed me, and when I got out, my mom used the spare key, got in and drove it away. The car was under her name because I bought it when I was 17. I was paying for it, and I only had one payment left. She was going to transfer it over to me when I finished with the last payment. I know a lot of you are jumping with suggestions, but I talked to police at the time, and there really wasn't anything I could do. A few days later, she drops off a check for the amount of the car, or rather, what I'm owed. It was $1,800 for a car worth $25,000. On the side of the check, she showed her work subtracting out the gas, groceries, and heat that I owed her. I'm sure I have lots more stories, but as far as entitlement goes, she's on that crazy train. I'm doing fine now. By the way, I'm going to nursing school. Edit to answer some questions. 1. I did not have a $25,000 loan. I should have been more clear. I'd been saving for a long while and with help from my grandfather. I only had $5,000 left after the down payment. It wasn't through a bank. My mom covered the rest, and I was paying her back as fast as I could. My grandfather has since passed away, and I miss him dearly. 2. My dad helped me out a bit in the beginning, but he's not someone I can rely on. He has straight up told me he doesn't care and doesn't want me to come crying to him for money. His philosophy is that paying child support fulfilled his parental duties. 3. I love all the comments of support, but I don't have the time, energy, or money to sue my mom. I'd rather just forget she exists as soon as possible. Also, I'm working 14-hour days with school and work, so I'm always exhausted. Edit 2, because I forgot to mention something that might make the story a bit more fun. When she wasn't looking, I took my dog back. He and I are living very happily together. She never mentioned anything about it, but I'm assuming she must know it was me. The dog is registered under my name, chip and everything, so she couldn't take him back if she wanted, I think. Story 4. Backstory: I am Marley. I have a physical disability called arthrogryposis multiplex congenita, and I use a wheelchair to get around school, because I get tired a little more frequently than other people with no disability, plus it is just more convenient for me. At the time of this story I was in 7th grade. I am also supposed to leave about 5 minutes early from each class to allow myself enough time to get to the next before the halls get filled. Principals and staff are aware of this and are fine with it. Story. Okay, so this one day, I was in my band class, which was first period for me. That day, I didn't pay attention to the time, and I was a little late getting out of class. So I talked to the band directors, and we decided the best thing for me to do was to pull over in the cafeteria. It is right outside the band room, and wait for the halls to clear a little bit so I can continue down the hall to my class. One of the directors, who we will call Mr. Band, called the math teacher and told him I will be a few minutes late. Mr. Math. The math teacher said it was fine, and he understood. The head principal, let's call him Mr. Principal, came walking down the halls to make sure everyone was going where they were supposed to, and he happened to see me. I was sitting in my wheelchair inside the cafeteria. Mr. Principal went out of his way to come in and yell at me. He was like, "Why are you not going to class?" I wasn't paying attention, and the time flew by, and the bell ended up ringing before I left, sir. At this point, Mr. Principal was even angrier, and he almost ended up trying to write me up for detention. That is no reason to be sitting here waiting. Just go on to class. I was honestly really stressed because I have never been in a situation like this before. In my mind, I was trying to figure out what I should do. Some of the thoughts I had included, should I risk getting stuck in the halls and either getting run over myself or running someone else over, and, Mr. Principal, you are supposed to be fine with this. What is going on? Well, sir, I talked to Mr. Band, and we determined it would be the best thing to wait for the halls to get cleared. Mr. Band even messaged Mr. Math, and he agreed with us. You could tell Mr. Principal was getting angrier and angrier by the second. Well, I do not care what your teachers say. You need to get in class right now. By this time, the second bell had already rung and class already began. The halls were clear, and I was about ready to go. Okay then, but you do realize, back a few months ago, when we all had a meeting discussing what is best for me, and you said it is fine if I am a few minutes late to class? You were the one who said that. It is not like you disagreed. Listen here, if you don't get up to math right now, you will get in school suspension. Okay, fine, I will leave right now. See you soon, Mr. Principal, I said while trying to hold back tears. You are not going anywhere until I say you can. Sir, you literally just said if you don't get to class right now, you will have this. I was legit about to punch that stupid principal right in the face, or ram into him with a 50-pound wheelchair along with a 100-pound human in it. I was so frustrated. Oh yeah? Did I say that? Whatever, I am still not done talking to you. If you actually paid attention to time, you could have avoided this whole situation. Well, sir, I am pretty sure we all make mistakes and get a few minutes behind sometimes. Okay, fine, get to class. If I see you sitting in the halls, sometimes waiting ever again, you will be in big trouble. So I went on to math class, and when I got there, Mr. Math said, "Well, hey there, glad to see ya. I heard you were going to be a few minutes late, and that is fine, but class has been in session for about 10 minutes now. How about I talk to you after class?" All right, that's fine. So I sat in math and listened to Mr. Math teach for about 30 minutes. Then he let us have some time to work on the assignment. Towards the end of the class, Mr. Math called me back. "Why were you so late to class today? I knew you were going to be a few minutes late, but that was quite a long time." Well, it is a long story, but basically Mr. Principal saw me waiting in the cafeteria for the other kids to get by so I didn't get stuck behind, and came over to me. He was not very happy that I was late. Is that so? Well, I am so sorry. I completely understand. End of the story. By the way, the principal got bad karma after that incident. The Board of Education ended up getting rid of Mr. Principal. One of the assistant principals took his place and hired Mr. Math teacher as one of the new assistants. I am so happy that that principal got fired. No one at the school liked him. Story 5. Okay, so background to this story. My parents and I had a family-run handyman/rental property make-ready business for a little over 20 years. As such, we were regular customers at one particular store. About 30-some-odd years ago, there was a lumberyard/building supply store in my city that everybody went to for all their building and repair needs. It was a very busy store with lots of well-paid employees to help customers. Each assistant knew their section of the store and how products were to be used. Then the two big brand box stores moved into town, and this lumberyard's business bottomed out. They went from a fully knowledgeable staff to a skeleton crew of minimum-wage teens who didn't know the difference between a measuring tape and a yardstick, and the store manager. The manager, it should be noted, was a foul-tempered bastard with zero tolerance, dealing with anybody that wasn't a large account contractor. Us old-timers still preferred that store as we knew where everything was. When we needed something, we would just go in and get it. No muss, no fuss. Now, because the store was so severely understaffed, and the kids didn't know their butts from a hole in the ground, us old-timers were always willing to help people unfamiliar with the store to find whatever they were looking for. The setup? I had gone into the store to get some pipe fittings and do a bit of browsing when I spotted an older gentleman looking lost. I approached him and made an offhand query if he needed help finding something. The look of relief on his face was palatable. He explained a recent windstorm had damaged the gate on his privacy fence and needed new hinge parts. I've been looking for someone to help me, but I've only found one kid, who knew less than me and was no help, Mr. Gentleman said, with a profound air of annoyance. I told him I understood, and explained why the service here was so bad now, and that in the future, he should simply ask another customer for help. Odds were the other customer would be a regular who knew what and where. At this point, I directed Mr. Gentleman 3 aisles over to where the parts he needed were located. As we stood looking over the gate hardware, I made inquiries regarding the damage. It was fortunate that I did, as the damage he described was far more severe than a simple hinge change would fix. As I explained what he would need to do to fix the gate, we were interrupted by a clawed hand digging into my shoulder and a screech in my ear. I need help. Enter the Karen. This lady was of an older generation, caked on makeup, tight-fitting starched jacket and skirt, and impractical stiletto high heels. I simply turned my body so she was forced to let go. I later checked, and her nails had left marks in my skin. Still, I was raised with manners, so I calmly said, "I don't work here, ma'am." Liar. I saw you helping this man find what he wants. Now it's my turn. Find me this part for my rent house, Karen demanded, while holding up a slip of paper with notes scrawled on it. I don't work here, ma'am. I'm a customer as well, I said once more while pointing at my clothes, which consisted on black t-shirt, grungy and torn blue jeans, black surplus military boots, all of which were liberally covered in a combination of paint splatters, drywall spackle, and silicone caulking. Karen ignored what I said. Look here, you little jerk. I am this store's largest customer, as I own over 300 rental properties across town, and the manager is a good friend of mine. If you don't get me this part now, I will have you fired. Now, as I've said, the manager of this store was a nasty piece of work to anybody that didn't have a large bank book. From the looks of Karen's clothing and jewelry, I figured she would be someone the manager would brown nose. As I didn't want to risk the manager banning me from the store just to curry favor with this Karen, I decided to just go along and help her find what she was looking for and be done with it. I took the paper and looked at the notes. It was a part for an old gas floor heating furnace. The system was no longer legally code complaint, but that didn't stop property owners from still using the stupid things if they could still find the parts. As I had to pull more than one of these cumbersome suckers out of rent houses after a plumber safely disconnected the gas lines, I knew a thing or two about them, including where the parts should be if they were available. I excused myself from Mr. Gentleman and took off at a brisk walk. Karen had to struggle to keep up in her too tight pencil skirt and heels. The heating aisle was 3/4 of the way across the store. Karen didn't seem to enjoy the brisk walk. I quickly walked down the aisleway looking for the part in question, And as I thought would be the case, the part was not stocked on the shelves. Just to be sure, I craned my neck to look at the top overstocked shelf. To my utter surprise, lo and behold, there were a couple of boxes of the part. Now the real fun starts. I pointed out the part in question to Karen. "Get it," Karen demanded. "I can't. It's in the overstock. Only a store employee is allowed to use the ladder to get something off those shelves," I explained. "You are an employee," Karen screamed in my face. "I've been told I have the patience of a saint, but I have my limits. Rampant stupidity is my Rubicon." "Listen here, you great blathering moron. I am not an employee," I screamed right back. "I am a customer. A person who buys here, not works here. Go to the front desk and tell whoever is working there you need that part off the overstock. They will get someone who does work here to get the ladder and get the part for you." With that, I walked away. This was a Karen I was dealing with, suo. Not over with. I had returned to Mr. Gentleman, who should be noted, and informed me he had a good laugh when he heard me spelling out customer at the top of my considerable baritone lungs over halfway across the store. As we were wrapping up our previously interrupted discussion concerning the repairs of his fence gate, a young woman approached Mr. Gentleman and I. Excuse me," she said. "Yeah," I responded. My first thought was she was a customer who needed some help. "I know you don't work here, 'cause," she pointed to my clothes, "and I'm pretty sure everybody in the state heard you spelling out customer." Mr. Gentleman snickered. "But since nobody else seems to be around that does work here, I thought I should tell somebody that I just saw that woman pushing the ladder down the same aisle I saw you and that woman earlier," the young woman said. I was like, "Oh no." I took off like a rocket heading for the front of the store. It only took me a handful of seconds to get to the registers and ordering counter. As I feared, the only person at the station was the manager, and he was busy talking to a contractor on the phone. Easy to deduce due to the simple fact he was sounding friendly. I waved my arms to get his attention, and he turned away, ignoring me. I began slapping the counter loudly while yelling his name. He put a finger in his opposite ear to drown out the sounds. "Do you know of those reddish discs of peanut brittle some stores have at the counters? Makes for great projectiles." Mr. Manager was quite vulgar is his displeasure, having had one bounce off his head. I cut off his tirade by yelling that one of his customers was trying to use a stock ladder to get a box off the overstock shelf. That shut him up. Long enough for the both of us to hear a woman's scream of distress echoing across the building. He looked at me with dawning horror, and I simply said, "Heating aisle." We took off running. We found Karen lying at the bottom of the stock ladder, her left foot bare of shoe and twisted around in the opposite direction it should be pointing. Her missing shoe, the stiletto heel protruding through the steel grating, was at the top of the ladder's platform. It was obvious the heel had slipped through the grating. Karen had lost her balance and broke her ankle while falling. Mr. Manager used his walkie-talkie to order a yard guy to call for an ambulance. During the entire time we were waiting for the ambulance to arrive, Karen just kept screaming and screaming. Understandable, being in pain, but sheesh, did she have a high pitch. When the medics began to take her away, she pointed at me and yelled at Mr. Manager, "I want him fired." Mr. Manager looked at me, looked at her, back at me, then back to her and said, "He doesn't work here." Mr. Gentleman, standing nearby observing the events, busted a gut laughing. Story 6. Now you all know from my last post that my mother tried to act like she's in charge of my life and also acted like my house was hers to give away. Well, that ended very badly for both her and my spoiled sister because I threatened to expose them. And that whole incident inspired me to get cameras for my house inside and outside. My dad was old school. He didn't care for cameras at home. He didn't even care for TV save for the occasional movie. He mostly enjoyed his scotch with a cigarette and a good book. But now, I own this house, and cameras were a very needed upgrade. And just in case my girlfriend and I didn't tell anybody outside of our close friend circles about them, and those that do know were sworn to secrecy and kept their word. A couple of weeks had gone by without any word from my mother or sister other than what I was seeing on my sister's social media. She was constantly complaining about having to live in our mother's basement, and I'm pretty sure she was making our mother miserable for it. But what came next surprised me. I got a frantic call from my sister saying that her boyfriend was questioning whether or not he was the father of her pregnancy, and he was threatening to leave without a paternity test. My sister swore up and down to me that she's always been faithful to him. I admit I believed there was a chance she could be lying, because our mother's own past affair made our father question our paternity as well. So I suggested they get the DNA test. But my sister just babbled about how they don't have a lot of money. I offered to pay for it so long as she didn't come to me asking for money or favors often. She quickly agreed. I arranged for the test and even shelled out extra to make sure we got the test results as soon as possible. But it would still take a few days. I hadn't yet met my sister's boyfriend, but when I did, I started to understand a bit more. He's half Hispanic, and my mother, though not open about it, is quite the closet racist. Something she got from my grandparents, sadly. I decided to try and talk to the guy and took him out for a beer, and while at the pub, he spilled his guts to me. He said that my mother had been whispering in his ear about how my sister is just like her, and she'd cheated before, so my sister might have as well. This made him have doubts that grew every day, and he said he wasn't sure my sister didn't cheat or get pregnant on purpose to try and baby trap him, so she won't have to work any more than she already does with her little part-time online sales job. Sadly, I knew he was probably right about the latter. But other than that, he's described her as a completely different person when she's not around our mother. But ever since they've been living in Mom's basement, she's become more and more like a child. After what I saw at my house, I wholeheartedly believed him, so I asked if he suggested she get therapy. He admitted he wanted to, but didn't have the money, and had been walking on eggshells around her and our mother for a while, so he never talked about it. Well, I guess that made some brotherly instincts I didn't know I still had kick in, because I started to realize if I was going to have a niece or nephew, I couldn't let them live with or be raised by my mother. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I told him that if the DNA results came back positive, I'd offer him a job and training at the company I now own. He very quickly agreed because he doesn't want to live with my mother any more than he has to. Well, the day of the DNA test results coming in the mail came pretty fast. But my sister called me, saying they weren't in the mail she'd gotten that day. I asked who got the mail from the post office box, and she answered it was our mother. That pretty much confirmed my theory she was trying to force out my sister's boyfriend. But since I don't and never really have trusted my mother, with my sister's consent, I preemptively got the clinic to send a copy of the DNA results to my address as well. And they did come in the mail that same day. I called my mother and asked if she'd taken the DNA test results. The following conversation is more or less what I recall since it wasn't recorded. Me: hello, Mom. I heard that sister's DNA test didn't come in the mail today. Mom: oh, yes, but it could be here soon. Did you take it? I know it arrived today as I paid to have it set as priority mail. What? How dare you accuse me of such a thing? I would never. Okay then. I guess I'll just bring over the backup copy that was sent to me. Backup copy? Yeah, I had one sent to me as well on the same day since I paid for it. Sister gave her okay and everything. I guess I'll just call her then and we'll meet up. Wait, that's N. Click. I hung up the phone and called my sister right away. I picked up my sister and her boyfriend from my mother's house and drove to a local diner restaurant. And there we opened the envelope together. Sure enough, the test results were positive. My sister's boyfriend was so happy that he actually asked her if she'd want to marry him. And she said yes, like half a dozen times. The little vindictive part of me was just waiting to see my mother's face when she got the news. But what happened next honestly shocked me. When I took my sister back home, hers and her boyfriend's stuff was in the process of being put out onto the lawn by a few men we didn't recognize. My sister froze with a look on her face I'd never seen before. Our mother came huffing outside in a rage, While holding the DNA test results, she claimed never arrived and began verbally tearing into my sister. "Mom, how could you make a baby with that racial slur? I thought your dating him was just a stupid phase. But now you're gonna have his baby and marry him. I would have been sort of okay with having his little bastard around if you weren't raising it in my home and racial slur wasn't around anymore," said while pointing at sister's boyfriend. Sister, "But mommy, Mom, no buts, young lady. I demand you abort that little word I do not want to use from your belly right now, or leave my house at once." Then she turned to me while snapping her fingers and said, "And you, I hope you're proud of yourself. I tried to make this family normal. But you wouldn't do as I say like a good son should. And now all my plans are ruined. You're all a bunch of racial slurs." Meanwhile, my sister was on her knees in the grass and holding her belly, crying, I can't. My mother then actually grabbed my sister's hair and was poised ready to take a swing at her. But one good glare from me, and she froze in place and then rigidly lowered her arm. So she just let out a loud growl and stormed back into her house, screaming, "She's your problem now, Craggle. I no longer have any children." That night, I put up my sister and her boyfriend up in a hotel until a friend of my lawyer, that works in real estate, helped arrange an apartment for them as soon as possible. And like I promised, I gave my sister's boyfriend a job. He's new and pretty much starting at the bottom rung, but he's a quick learner. It'll take a while, but I'll get him in a good position, and he's very happy to work for me. My sister is now in therapy paid for by my company's insurance and has already started to act more mature than I've ever seen her. She's stopped referring to our mother as Mommy and has even started talking about her the way I do. She came to me recently and said she's working harder now, and told me I was right about her being a spoiled mooch, and she's going to work hard to be a good mother and provider for her child. Her therapist seems to really be doing a great job. As for my mother, well, she actually drove up to my house in broad daylight when no one was home and broke several of my front windows with large rocks she had in a metal bucket, and the rocks had racial slurs written all over them. But thanks to those cameras I put in, she was caught pretty easily. I had the footage in police hands that same day. I didn't bother to ask for repayment for the damages she caused. The windows were old anyway, and it just gave me an excuse to remodel. But I pressed charges and even got a restraining order. She's not allowed within 500 feet of me or my property. She also took quite the downfall online, as I had a dash cam in my car that picked up everything my mother said and did that evening. She kicked my sister out. And this time, I did show it to the rest of the family, and my sister also told pretty much the same story on her Facebook. That pretty much destroyed my mother's remaining image of her side of the family, so she's not really speaking much to any of them anymore. My mother didn't lose her job or anything because I didn't go that far. She's not set to retire for another decade or so. But some of her more petty relatives started submitting fake bad reviews for her Airbnb. And now she's probably losing customers. I've heard from one of the few relatives she's still talking to that she's pretty depressed and looks like a shell of her former self now.